Good morning. I will now call to order the October 13, 2022 Clackamas County Board of Commissioners business meeting. Gary Schmidt, please call the roll.
Yes, Chair Smith. First, our staff support today. Clerk to the Board, Tony Mayernick. County Counsel, Assistant County Counsel, Kathleen Rastetter. Commissioner Savas is delayed but will be here shortly. With that, roll call. Commissioner Schrader.
Here.
Commissioner Fisher.
Here.
Commissioner Shull.
Here.
Chair Smith.
Here. I will now lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you and good morning, everyone. We have several guests that have decided to come visit us today, and many of them want to speak at the end of the meeting. We are holding this meeting in personally and virtually. If you've joined us via Zoom for this meeting and are interested in providing public comment, we will prompt you how to do that when the time is right. General public comment will be taken at the usual allotted time. I would like to remind all participants, including staff, all elected officials, and members of the public that Robert's Rules of Order will be enforced in this business meeting. We welcome your opinions and look forward to your polite participation. Gary, what's the first item?
Thank you, Chair. The first item today is consent agenda. Tony, would you please read the consent agenda?
Clackamas County Consent Agenda. Elected officials, item 1, approval of October 6, 2022 business meeting minutes for the Board of County Commissioners. Transportation and Development, item 1, approval of a board order authorizing the purchase of one 2023 Freightliner truck with a Columbia dump body from Premier Truck Group through a State of Oregon cooperative contract. Total purchase order value is $257,302. Funding is through the County Road Fund. No county general funds are involved. Health, Housing, Human Services, item 1, approval of an amendment updating program language and increasing funding for fiscal year 2023 of the intergovernmental agreement from the Oregon Health Authority for financing public health services. Amendment value is $289,502.67. Fiscal year agreement value is increased to $5,318,585.67. Funding is through the Oregon Health Authority. No county general funds are involved. Item 2, approval of an intergovernmental agreement from the Oregon Department of Human Services to continue the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program Employment and Training Program. Agreement value is $151,065.72 for 1 year. Funding is through the Oregon Department of Human Services with matching funds through Child Family Community Connections Division fund balance and $100,000 in budgeted county general funds. Item 3, approval of an amendment to increase funding for contractor wages through an intergovernmental agreement from the Oregon Department of Education for the Healthy Families Oregon program. Amendment value is $132,438.60. Agreement value is increased to $2,102,029.86 for 2 years. Funding is through the Oregon Department of Education. No county general funds are involved. Item 4, approval of an amendment increasing funding and modifying terms of an intergovernmental agreement from the Oregon Department of Education to provide Clackamas Early Learning Hub coordination and support and Raise Up Oregon strategic planning. Amendment value is $67,210.10. Total agreement value is increased to $1,820,472.10 for 2 years. No county general funds are involved. Item 5, approval of a professional services agreement from Clackamas Workforce Partnership to coordinate expungement clinics for the Clean Slate Clackamas project. Agreement value is $30,000 for 10 months, funded through Clackamas Workforce Partnership. No county general funds are involved. Item 6, approval of an amendment extending duration and increasing funding of an intergovernmental agreement to Clackamas County Circuit Court to continue protective order and support services. Amendment value is $6,940 for 1 month. Agreement value is increased to $242,355 for 3 years and 1 month. Funding is through the U.S. Department of Justice. No county general funds are involved. Item 7, approval of a grant agreement from the Oregon Department of Transportation for Mount Hood Express operations. Grant value is $206,350 for 2 years. Funding is through the Federal Transit Administration. No county general funds are involved. Item 8, approval of a non-federal subrecipient grant agreement to Zoar Evangelical Lutheran Church for extreme weather and smoke shelter services. Grant value is $55,005. Funding is through the Oregon Department of Housing and Community Services, and $5,050 in budgeted county general funds. Item 9, approval of a change order with Civil Works Northwest Incorporated due to county road department requirements for the 10 Yek Road sidewalk improvements adjacent to Sandy Health Center. Change order value is $62,035. Total contract value is increased to $190,135. Funding is through County Development, Community Development, Block Grant Funds, and Health Centers Division Fund balance. No county general funds are involved. Item 10, approval of a pharmacy services agreement to Optum Pharmacy 702 LLC for Section 340B drug discount pharmacy services. Anticipated revenue of $5.94 million over 3 years. Funding through federal Section 340B drug discount program. No county general funds are involved. Item 11, approval of a personal services contract to Northwest Family Services for outpatient mental health and substance use disorder services. Contract maximum value is $160,000. Funding is through the Oregon Health Authority. No county general funds are involved. Madam Chair, that concludes the list.
Thank you, Tony. Does any commissioner wish to remove anything off the consent agenda? I will entertain a motion.
I move we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Commissioner Schrader has moved for approval of the consent agenda, and Commissioner Fisher has seconded the motion. Any further discussion? Tony, please take the poll.
Commissioner Schrader.
Aye.
Commissioner Schull.
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher.
Aye.
Chair Smith.
Aye, motion passes 4-0. Thank you very much. I will now recess as the Board of County Commissioners and convene as the Development Agency Board.
Next is the consent agenda for the Development Agency. Tony, would you please read the consent agenda?
Development Agency consent agenda, 1 item, approval of a resolution authorizing a debt issuance to finance new projects in the North Clackamas revitalization area. Anticipated issuance is $10 million with a 10-year term. Funding is through tax increment financing. No county general funds are involved.
Any commissioner wish to remove this item for the consent agenda? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I move for approval of the Development Agency consent agenda.
Second.
Commissioner Schull has moved for approval of the Development Agency consent agenda. Commissioner Schrader has seconded that motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Tony, please call the poll.
Commissioner Schull.
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader.
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher.
Aye.
Chair Smith.
Aye, motion passes 4-0. I will now adjourn as a development agency and reconvene as a Board of County Commissioners. Up next is public communication. Wow, we went through that in lightning fast order, and we have several cards. The portion of the agenda shall be limited to items of county business which are properly the object of board consideration and should be nonpartisan in nature, as the BCC is a nonpartisan governing body under Oregon Revised Statutes and County Code. Testimony is limited to 3 minutes. Comments shall be respectful and courteous to all. As a reminder, you can email submissions for public comment at bcc@clackamas.us, and these will be accepted as part of the public record. However, we will not be reading them at the business meeting due to time constraints. I will now open the meeting for public testimony. I will take in-person testimony first. We have several cards here. I have an order of the first 3 speakers. Brian Ecker, please come forward. State your name, area of residence, and you have 3 minutes, to be followed by Richard Leroy, followed by Gloria, is it Mantes? Hope I said that right. Brian, go ahead.
Good morning.
You bet.
I'd like to
Please
introduce this
yourself for the record
Oh,
and state
sorry.
your area of residence, and sir, you have 3 minutes.
Brian Ecker, Lake Oswego.
Thank you.
I wanted to introduce this resolution to you all. I've emailed it, and I can also re-email it to you because there's some changes to it. And I'm just going to read it for you.
Sure.
With the intent to influence the future policy and prevent undue litigation against the county, cities, businesses within, it's important to review the most current scientific study and data coming to light regarding the effectiveness of past COVID-19 lockdown policies. Please consider the following resolution pertaining to Clackamas County. Attached is the thoroughly sourced material backing all statements and claims. Whereas COVID-19 vaccines offer little to no protection against variants, whereas COVID-19 vaccines impair individuals' immunity, causing them to be more susceptible to illness, whereas safe and effective alternative prophylactic FDA-approved treatments were tested, used, and globally available, whereas COVID-19 vaccines are far less effective than natural immunity, whereas COVID-19 vaccines are still not fully approved outside EUA use, whereas under 21 U.S. Code 360BBB3 provides EUA products require the option to accept or refuse administration of the product, of the consequences, if any, of refusing administration of the product, and of the alternatives to the product that are available, and of their benefits and risks. Whereas under 21 U.S.C. 360BBB3 requires the Secretary of HHS as a condition of authorization of unapproved products for use requires individuals to whom the product is administered are informed of the option to refuse or accept the product. Whereas COVID-19 vaccines were in fact administered without proper informed consent per the statutes, be it resolved to protect the citizens, businesses, governmental offices, education institutions, the community of Clackamas County, no health mandates will be adhered to that do not include proper informed consent as dictated by statute. Clackamas County will not enforce any new or existing vaccine mandates and/or medical treatments issued by the state of Oregon, a state agency of Oregon, or an agency of the U.S. federal government that do not include informed consent as dictated by statute. Therefore, be it resolved to protect the citizens in an effort to provide timely and adequate informed consent to all citizens of Clackamas County, the County Health Department shall be directed to fully comply.
Go ahead,
with-
please finish.
Thank you. Fully comply with 21 U.S.C. 360BBB3 and create a written warning about the possible side effects of any vaccine or medical treatment and a notice regarding the inability to file suit against the vaccine manufacturers or the U.S. government in the event of an EUA COVID-19 vaccine injury. This document must be distributed to any person or persons responsible for care of a minor or elder who is seeking or receiving a COVID-19 vaccination or medical treatment at any physical location in Clackamas County.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Please submit the updated version.
I have a copy for all of you.
Okay, good. You can hand them to our clerk over here. Gary, I'd like to present a point of clarification regarding Mr. Eggert's testimony. Now, at Clackamas County, we held the position that vaccines are a choice, correct? And for our employees, what was the action that we took on that?
We did not require vaccines for county employees other than what the state of Oregon required for employees working in healthcare settings. They had a vaccination requirement, but we at the county adopted a very open religious and medical exemption policy.
So Clackamas County offered religious exemptions to all of our county employees who wanted one. And I believe, first of all, we don't know who took those religious exemptions because that is private information, okay? and it is held privately. I believe no one was fired in Clackamas County because of failure to get a vaccination. There may have been one person who quit, who refused to take a religious exemption. I felt at the time that the religious exemption was the easiest way on a glide path to have your vaccines be a personal choice regarding your personal health care. Thank you very much. Next up is Richard Leroy. Please come forward. State your name, area of residence, and sir, you have 3 minutes.
Richard Leroy, Milwaukee, Oregon. This is further of Brian's testimony. Okay, currently, there are no approved COVID-19 vaccines available in the U.S. All currently available vaccines are only authorized for emergency use authorization, EUA Act. Per the FDA's 8/23/21 approval announcement, the full FDA COVID vaccine approval is for a drug, Comirnaty, that does not yet exist and is unavailable for future use. Therefore, every COVID shot remains under a EUA law. All employees are protected against mandated vaccines, including COVID vaccines, under 21 U.S.C. 360 BBB-3, which provides that EUA products, like the COVID-19 vaccines, require that people have the option to accept or refuse administration of the product. FDA has an obligation to ensure that the recipients of the vaccine under the EUA are informed that they have the option to accept or refuse the vaccine. This means all people have the right to decline a medication that is not fully licensed. In addition to federal law, the FDA includes the Nuremberg Code and the Helsinki Declaration on its website, emphasizing the fact that people cannot be forced to take experimental drugs without their full consent. So there is, in addition, there is no available FDA-approved licensed vaccine. Here's what is happening. If the FDA approved and licensed COVID-19 vaccine, it would have to revoke the EUA vaccines and subject the vaccine maker to more liability risk. So it only approved a future vaccine that isn't available. Okay, in addition to that, individuals that experience COVID-19 vaccine side effects cannot sue the vaccine manufacturer or the U.S. government. In February 2020, the COVID-19 vaccine manufacturers were granted immunity from all liability by the federal government. Alex Azar, U.S. Health and Human Services, HHS Secretary, invoked the Public Readiness and Emergency Preparedness Act, the PrEP Act, giving these companies total immunity from all liability. This means that these companies cannot be sued for damages over an injury up to and including death related to their COVID-19 vaccines. In addition, the U.S. government or its agencies, FDA, etc., cannot be sued either for approving or disapproving a drug, as they are protected under sovereign immunity.
Thank you very much for that. I let Brian go over because he was reading the resolution. I thought it was important that the whole thing was entered into the record. Thank you very much, Richard, for coming forward. The next person up, and I cannot read your writing, it's my fault. Gloria, is it Mantes? Yeah, come on up, please. And yeah, pronounce your name correctly for me and your area of residence, and you have 3 minutes.
My name is Gloria Montes. I reside in Camden.
Montes. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. So this is not about mandates, but about the informed consent. And I'll just go over a few notes that I have here. So the White House was attempting the mandatory measures on the U.S. population, and several groups with special ties and interest to the administration were exempt from the forced vaccinations. And I'll just back up. I mean, I love that the Clackamas County was generous, but we shouldn't have even lost one single county employee for
That was his choice.
for
It was not our
vaccination.
choice. Remember,
And-
everybody has a choice.
And that's a Clackamas County employee, but I'm talking about Clackamas County residents in total. Like, everybody should have been free to, and have their informed consent. So the U.S. Postal Service, covering 644,000 workers, are exempt, despite the fact that they interacted with tens of millions of Americans and homeowners' households every day. In a September 2021 White House press briefing, the press secretary Jen Psaki confirmed the White House staff will not be required to take the vaccine. Members of Congress and their staff were exempt. Federal court system employees exempt. Pfizer employees not required to be vaccinated. Illegal immigrants, including those in federal detention centers, not required to get vaccinated. Throughout human history, science has always been that the natural immunity is the best, most effective means of protection. This is confirmed yet again with COVID-19, the largest worldwide study to date, which was analysis from the database of Maccabi Healthcare Services with close to 2.5 million Israelis. Israeli had one of the highest vaccination rates in the world, as well as some of the highest infection rates in the world. 2 studies found that people that were vaccinated in January and February, in June through the first half of August, were 6 to 13 times more likely to get infected than the unvaccinated people who were previously infected with coronavirus. In one study with over 32,000 people, the risk of developing COVID-19 was 27 times higher among the vaccinated, and the risk of hospitalization 8 times higher. And along with that, many experts believe the Pfizer clinical trials were poorly designed from the very beginning. All studies were financed by Pfizer. The methodology used for the studies was developed by Pfizer. The studies were administered by Pfizer. The reports were written by Pfizer. And it's kind of commonly referred to as the fox watching the hen house, with Pfizer financing, writing, and administering the studies. And where was the oversight?
Thank you very much for that. Appreciate you coming forward. Anybody else who, I have a stack of cards, but anybody else who wants to testify, you can fill out a blue card and put it in the basket for us, please. Up next, Les Poole. Please come forward, state your name, your area of residence, and you have 3 minutes.
Good morning, Les Poole. I live in the county and have for a long time. This is the first I heard of the resolution, but regardless of whether there's a resolution, I think there's a message out there that confidence in some of the things that have been done is not there. And I don't personally hold, and I don't think these folks necessarily hold the county at fault or liable for some of the things that went on during the pandemic. But I don't think these folks that are appearing are deniers, and I don't think they're being unreasonable. But I think there's a message in what they're saying there, and it's a message that really belongs in Salem, and it's a message to the federal government. I did notice that in the consent agenda, we're up to $5 million that's been received from the OHA over time, and I don't know how much of that comes with strings attached, but I know they love to attach strings, so sometimes your hands are tied. We've got an election coming, and as I've mentioned previously in my comments, and others have realized, the issue of imposing tolls on us to drive on highways that are paid for is a big one. And hopefully the petition is ready for release possibly as soon as today to require a public vote on that. And some believe that it's too late. Well, I don't believe it is, and I don't believe that ODOT thinks it is, based on ODOT's reaction to it. And the reason is simple. ODOT and the state are attempting to do something that the Federal Transportation Administration doesn't currently approve of. They only approve of tolling to pay for specific projects and capacity expansion. The scheme that's been cooked up, as I like to call it, the scheme, is not conventional tolling, and there's a lot of confusion about that. What the state has received is the authorization for a 2-year test. As we all know, they're looking at tolling and installing part of the system. And when they do that, they have to operate that for 2 years. At the end of a 2-year term, certainly ODOT will be going to the federal government seeking permanent approval. That will not happen before the November 2024 election, obviously. It's very likely that if the petitioners do a good job and the public sentiment continues, the statewide initiative would make the November 2024 ballot, and that would require a vote before we see this permanently imposed. So let's keep our eyes on that issue, and as always, thank you much for your time.
Thank you very much. Up next, Suzanne Corlane? Or Quarter? Cordier? Quarter, okay, thank you. Please state your name, area of residence, and you have 3 minutes.
Suzanne Corder, Boring.
Hold the microphone nice and close so we can hear you.
Suzanne Corder in Boring. And
Thank you.
I was here 2 weeks ago speaking about, or commenting on the impact of the Portland Water Bureau's proposed filtration plant right on our border and how it will impact Clackamas County. And today I'm speaking more specifically about road safety and school safety. So we know that one thing they are coming to you with is an access road off of Bluff right next to Oregon Trails Academy. Right next to it. And I've brought in today a letter from the principal for all of you and given it to Tony. So basically, they're concerned, we're concerned. Also, the other concern is the trucks coming into the project can come off of 212, 211 with rocks from up in Estacada. We know coming out of Nass Elementary or Boring Middle School, it's terrible to get onto 212. And then right away is that intersection on 282nd. It's just like, I've taken my grandchildren to school there a lot, and heart palpitations, basically, to get on that road to come home again. So we're really concerned about the traffic. And right now, up in Sandy, they're doing the extension bypass, I think they call it, that's coming up around to Sandy High School from over, I think it's 362nd over to Bell. And for some reason, all those dump trucks are coming up and down Bluff. They're not using 26, which is a better road for big trucks. So our concern is the safety for the schools, what's going to happen to the roads out there. We're going to be paying for a project that's not going to benefit Clackamas County so much, this water filtration. It's going to benefit Multnomah County. It's for them. Again, as I stated last time, Multnomah County has told them that their roads are not sufficient to support that kind of traffic, that many tons of trucks going back and forth every day, and I don't think Clackamas County should take it on as our responsibility to solve their problem. And I know Chair Smith, you had said last time that you were concerned about the Bull Run Bridge, and I am concerned about it too, but I don't think taking one problem and trying to get trucks off the Bull Run Bridge and giving that problem to another situation, having roads destroyed in our county because of these trucks. So anyway, that's my concern. I will be talking to the principals at the other schools and see if I can get letters from them too. But
Thank you very much for
thank
coming
you.
forward.
Okay.
Gary, a statement was made, Clackamas County is paying for a project that benefits Multnomah County. I don't understand what she means by that. Do you know what she means by
She's
that?
referring to the access road that potentially may have to be built to accommodate this project. That road has not been built yet. It will not be built until we brief you first, Commissioner.
So the board has not approved that yet, correct?
That's correct. No approval yet.
No approval yet.
That's what I was coming to talk about.
No approval yet. We are not yet, and I don't know if we will, pay for this in the future. We have a lot of needs. I'll just make a point of clarification on the Bull Run Bridge. That bridge currently ranks 2 on a scale of 100 on safety. It is so bad that at one point the asphalt fell apart that you could see the running water going through as you were standing in the middle of the bridge. That is an old Burnside Bridge from 100 years ago that was moved up to there, and we're trying to get funding for that. Now, the main occupants, besides the few residents that live up there, is the city of Portland hauling very heavy trucks, 12 tons at a time, to purify their water system in the Bull Run watershed to provide drinking water to a very large region in Portland and Multnomah County, and I have asked for their assistance in this bridge. Clackamas County has applied for 5 or 6 grants on this, and we have been turned down every single time. And it may come to a point where we'll have to limit the bridge. And so that's where we're at, because regardless of what the version is on this, it will become a safety issue. And safety is foremost on that. Up next, Chris Corder.
Chris Corder, I'm a homeowner in Clackamas County on Dodge Park Boulevard. Yeah, what I would like to echo from the previous speaker is this question of why isn't the Portland Water Bureau addressing these safety issues? That's, to me, inconceivable at this point in their planning. I go to all their Zoom meetings, their live meetings. They say things like, when it talks about safety, traffic, in regards to general traffic, schools, they say things like, we're still researching it, we're still looking into it, we're giving that to the contractors. They have, to me, I'm just going to say it nicely to you folks, they're faking it right now. They don't have any good answers at this point for something that serious. And the question is, why don't they have answers? So, just asking you to look into that. Don't go along. That's what they're hoping you do. That's what they want you to do. This isn't a done deal. And I'm just asking you to, you yourselves as the commissioners of this county, to look into it seriously on those very important safety issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, I just maybe would like to inquire with our transportation department and see if there's an agreement to take care of the wear and tear on the roads. Typically, when a contractor builds, like say a subdivision, and they need access, that access is monitored and agreed upon with the county road department. If it's a county, if it's a city, it's a city. And I do know that there's been some agreements that, because they know that these heavy dump trucks, that the road will be pummeled. It'll just basically be so worn down by the time they're completed that they have a responsibility to repave the roads and so on. And safety is a big, huge component of that as well. So I just like to know if there is agreements with them. And on a side note, I just want to remind folks that the Bull Run Reservoir, the water that's in it, is in Clackamas County.
Yep.
And it does not serve Clackamas County. And there's revenue that's generated, and it's certainly providing drinking water for a lot of folks, but here we are, we're funding a bridge, or we're stuck with the funding of the bridge. We're having a hard time getting support from Portland for the bridge, and yet we're not the primary user, nor are our citizens the primary user.
I agree with Commissioner Savas on this very much. When Commissioner Schrader and I took a lobby trip to Washington, D.C. in September, we presented a letter to the federal delegation, including Earl Blumenauer, Senators Merkley and Wyden, signed by, the first time ever, 3 jurisdictions, myself, Multnomah County Chair Deborah Kafori, and City Councilor Mapes. We all agreed that we needed federal funding for this, and it's only, a $9 or $6 million fix, and we're putting 20% of our own money in it, of our road fund money, or whatever money it's coming from. So there is a disproportionality regarding this. Commissioner Savas makes an excellent point. This is water located in Clackamas County that is basically feeding our neighbors to the north. I do not want to deny them drinking water whatsoever. Senator Merkley heard that. He got the entire Oregon delegation to sign on a letter to the federal grant people, whoever they were, I don't remember, because we've applied for so many. And also, I've had an opportunity to bring this to the attention of the governor at a reception that we were at. Thank you very much for your comments on that. Mark Rieksecker, please come forward. State your name, the correct pronunciation, and your area of residence.
I'm Dr. Mark Rieksecker, live in Oregon City, and have been a healthcare provider in Clackamas County for 32 years. My grandfather was sheriff of this county in the 1940s and 50s.
Really?
Yes. So, is sticking your arm out of the car window to receive an injection at a vaccine site giving informed consent? Article 38 U.S. Code, Section 7331 on informed consent states, the Secretary, upon the recommendation of the Undersecretary of Health, shall prescribe regulations establishing procedures to ensure that all medical and prosthetic research carried out and to the maximum extent practical, all patient care furnished under this title shall be carried out only with the full and informed consent of the patient. Let me describe informed consent. It requires 4 basic components and should include a 5th for legal purposes. Those 4 components are spelled out in the acronym PARQ and pronounced PARC. P stands for procedure. What procedure or service will be performed? A stands for alternatives. What are the other options to this procedure? Doing nothing is always an alternative. R stands for risk. What is the inherent risk of the procedure? What are the morbidity and mortality rates? The most important aspect is, does the benefit of the procedure outweigh the risk? If not, why do you want me to do this? Q stands for questions. What questions are of concern to you as a patient? All questions must be answered to the satisfaction of the patient. The patient must feel satisfied with the answers to each of these components to be considered informed. If not, then the patient is not required to proceed or give consent. They can't be forced, ridiculed, belittled, or coerced by any other means to comply. Even if the patient is fully informed, they can still deny consent. It is their God-given right by supremacy law to decide and supersedes the color of law. Earlier I said there should be a 5th component for the sake of legality. That would be your signature on a form that lists the procedures, alternative risks, and any questions asked. In today's litigious society, a signed consent letter would prevent many lawsuits. So again, I ask you, is sticking your arm out of the car window to receive an injection informed consent? At best, it is passive agreement, but a good attorney would challenge its validity and most likely win. The bottom line is that for all parties involved, the best approach is to follow the medically accepted standard protocol for PRQ, followed up with a signature of the recipient.
Thank you very much. Up next, Jennifer Pitcairn. If there's anybody else who wishes to testify, please put a card in the box over here. Thank you. Please introduce yourself, state your area of residence, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I'm Dr. Jennifer Pitcairn, a medical provider for Oregon City for the last 25 years, and I'm here to support the resolution that has been spoken about today in regards to informed consent. As a physician, I also have employees, and as a medical provider, I'm had to ask for them to either take a vaccine that they may or may not want or ask for a religious exemption. And I can understand that you may say that you have a choice, but perhaps it is not against their religion, but they are having to make a choice stating that it is against their religion if they would want to have not take this medical procedure. So I want people to understand that it's not truly a choice. In order to work for a medical provider, you are we're asking for information from them that's personal, what is their religion, in order to work for me. So I've also, as a medical provider, seen a lot of abnormal symptoms in patients that I have not seen in the last 25 years. Some of that is neurological issues, blood clots, heart palpitations, severe migraines, and that information is being censored. So I think it's really important that we acknowledge that there is an issue with the procedures that are mandated with the vaccine, and that we need informed consent, and people understand that there are risks to this procedure. And just like the previous physician said, there is a choice, should be a choice to do nothing as well. So I would love that Clackamas County would hold strong with that this is a personal choice with whatever goes on in the future, with even other mandates that may come, or the fact that the emergency clause perhaps should be let down now that things are different 2.5 years later from the onset of the pandemic. The CDC has acknowledged that there is not the same risks that they thought with the COVID, and also you may have just heard recently that Pfizer had acknowledged in saying that they did not test for this vaccine stopping for transmission. So it's important, again, I think as a county, for us to decide how do we want to honor our constituents in our county, hold strong for what we feel is important for personal choice as well. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Gary, could you please clarify for us what a religious exemption means, or maybe our attorney, one of you two?
I will start, and if Kathleen would like to help me. And we discussed this here at the county very seriously, our attorneys, our human resources professionals. It is a deeply held belief that you have, philosophically, religiously, about, in this case, vaccinations. So we did not, at least at Clackamas County, we didn't ask for your religion. You decided to make a statement, I, for religious purposes, am claiming an exemption. So we define it as a deeply held personal belief. Because of your religion, because of your philosophical beliefs, we didn't ask you to define your religion, but we trusted the employees that they stated deeply held belief that this was against their beliefs, and we accepted that on face value. Kathy, do you want to add to anything?
No, I mean, we were following the constitutional guidelines.
We use constitutional guidelines under deeply held belief, and the title is religious exemption. Take it or leave it. So what I told our employees, it's a gift from God. Up next, Samuel Lee Solene, is that correct? Sonali, come on up. Come on up.
Sonali Solem,
Thank you very much. Please state your area of residence.
Milwaukee,
Thank you.
Clackamas County here for about 12 years, small business owner, and here to support this resolution around informed consent. I want to tell you how many of my friends and people are moving to Clackamas County because of the way Clackamas did things a little differently in the pandemic. Embraced a little more sovereignty, personal choice, and I'd like to see it do more, and ask of you guys to really consider that. Dr. Pitcairn just referenced information that was made public, I believe yesterday or the day before, where a where a Pfizer official acknowledged that transmissibility had never even been tested.
Mm-hmm.
Yet the whole nation, the governments everywhere drank the Kool-Aid, and people were guilted, told that they would kill grandma and grandpa if they didn't get a jab because they would transmit it to their grandparents. You know, people were not allowed to see their dying relatives and said goodbye to them on FaceTime. You know, what's happened is tragic, and I would love to see Clackamas County being a leader in this way, in asking more questions, What the other doctor was saying about the arm out the window, that's not freaking informed consent. You know, and there was information that could have been shared at the time people were being offered the vaccine. They could have been told this isn't a vaccine, this is an alternative therapy. For one thing, you know, that was blinds, you know, that was part of the brainwashing. The definition of vaccine has been rewritten in the last 2 years. It's not the same as it was 5 years ago or 50 years ago. That could have been part of informed consent. This is not a vaccine, it's a gene therapy or it's an immunotreatment. This informed consent piece is huge. It's part of what allows every person to connect in with their own inner wisdom and make a choice that's right for them or their children. And there needs to be more emphasis placed on that going forward. Thanks for hearing my voice.
Thank you very much, Sonali. Up next, Tim Norgren. Please come forward, state your name, your area of residence, and you have 3 minutes.
Thanks. I'm Tim Norgren. See how close I need to get here. I'm also in Clackamas County. I'm Sonali's housemate. Actually, you're getting a really spontaneous testimony. I heard about this about an hour ago, but having been through the last few years, I figure it's well worth talking to you guys. I've learned that you guys have done no mandating and that this is more about just keeping things free and making sure that they're more free. I traveled through New Mexico. We took a tour of the country in the middle of the pandemic and saw that masks disappeared as soon as you went east for the most part. In New Mexico, they were doing some heavier stuff. The governor was going into restaurants and shutting them down, and well, trying to. They deputized a bunch of people unofficially and sent them in to say, well, you've got to close or, you know, or else. And so one restaurant took that to the local sheriff and said, hey, what's up with this? He said, if those people come back, you know, try and hold them there till I get there. I'm going to arrest them for impersonating a state officer, and this is totally, you know, out of bounds. Well, that one sheriff had all the power. So I guess what it's coming down to is you, local government, have the power here to protect us from any state mandates, and I'd love to see that happen. And I got sick. I got some kind of flu right about the time it all started. I was a stagehand, and apparently all of the other people I worked with who got tested said they had COVID. I got the flu for a couple weeks. I found when I was outside a little more, I felt better, but I got over it. And by then it's, you know, all this vaccination stuff hadn't even started, but I was already aware, like, oh, if I've got that, then I'm not falling into this fear game. I watched it all the fear tactics come up, and it just, okay, whatever, you know, I'm not doing that. That's, you know, and then find out, you know, you learn more and more about the gene therapy and all the negatives, and it just seemed insane to me. And then I watched people, you know, I lost my job. I'm not working for that union anymore because they were so oppressive. Just, you know, I walked in to defend our rights in a meeting and got called out like, oh, people get away from him, he's not vaccinated. Literally just total fear tactics. And I'd love to see Clackamas County protect us against that kind of crap, because it's more about control than it is about anything else. It's obviously not about health. And for us as local, you know, as a community to see that and just go, no, that's the big picture. I'll stand behind you all, come down on the spur of the moment to support anything you've got on that end. Thanks.
I want to thank you for the huge compliment that you just gave this board, thinking that we had the power to overrule a governor's mandate in time of emergency. Yes!
You have the power to stand up against it. That sheriff alone did
Thank you, sir. What I'm going to finish saying is, yes, the county commissions are, please sit down, are the feet on the ground for a lot of the programs in the state of Oregon. And we are mandated and mandated and mandated almost to death. However, in this situation, it was very frustrating for many of us, and we maneuvered through it the best we could. I just want to say, before we continue, we have an election coming up. We will have a new governor who will probably manage any further health crisis quite differently than the present governor. So please be mindful of your vote and do vote. Is there anybody else in the room who would like an opportunity to testify who has not done so yet? I see none. Tony, do we have anybody online?
Madam Chair, I have 3 registered and will put out a general call. I will start with Story Long. Story, you will have 3 minutes. Please state your name and area of residence.
Hi, my name is Story Long, and I live in Milwaukee in Clackamas County. And I'm speaking today as a pastor, organizer, and citizen in Clackamas County to affirm my support of Project Turnkey to provide shelter that is just deeply, deeply needed in Clackamas County. I've heard it said that the true measure of a society is how well it cares for its most vulnerable citizens. And the Project Turnkey funds present a critical opportunity for our county to do that. The most vulnerable among us are still our neighbors. And over the past few years, I've heard story after story from my neighbors about the situations that have led them to becoming houseless. And for so many, it was as simple as bad luck and being one tragedy, one medical emergency, one payment to keep a car running away from becoming houseless. Something that is likely true of more of us than you would think. This is the kind of instability that so many of our houseless neighbors live in. And one of the first steps in moving from instability to stability is to have a place to go home to store your things and to sleep at night. So taking care of our most vulnerable neighbors requires we first make sure that they have a roof over their heads and services that will help them transition into permanent housing. This is why I believe purchasing a hotel with Project Turnkey funds and turning it into permanent shelter is so important. We are currently in a state of emergency when it comes to housing, and utilizing Project Turnkey funds to secure hotels is a quick way to respond to this emergency and meet a very deep need in our county, where there's a severe lack of resources for our houseless neighbors, especially shelter resources. Our community's housing and homeless crisis require an all-hands-on-deck approach. These hotels offer a critical opportunity for the county to invest in solutions that work while saving money in the long run. It's a win-win. These hotels provide a clear opportunity to help ramp up supportive housing in our county. So I urge the Clackamas County Commissioners to purchase the hotels and immediately scale up the supportive housing services program. Thank you.
Thank you. Tony?
Next will be Joshua Kingsley. Joshua, please state your name and area of residence. You will have 3 minutes.
Hi, just checking. Can everybody see and hear me okay?
We can hear you, sir, yes.
Perfect. Awesome. Thanks. My name is Joshua Kingsley. I'm the pastor at King of Kings Lutheran Church in Milwaukee, near the intersection of Webster and Thiessen. I think it's technically in unincorporated Clackamas County. And I'm also here today to speak in favor of Project Turnkey. I know that for a lot of the people that I serve at King of Kings, we talk about the way that houselessness has become more visible in our county. I know that in our conversations we recognize the conflicting feelings that happen there of both sometimes feeling uncomfortable, feeling unsafe, and also feeling a lot of compassion and understanding, because many people that I work with, somewhere in their personal lives, it might be a nephew, it might be a grandchild, it might even be like a friend of a friend, but they know somebody who is struggling with finding housing. Through all of the conversations that we've had and seeing the different approaches that have been tried, it seems very reasonable to us to provide temporary housing for people and help support the folks that are ready to make changes and do something different, and at the very least give people a place that they can be out of the elements, and to help keep things together for them. Currently, we understand that the 2 hotels that are being considered in Project Turnkey are already being used for these purposes. So it makes sense to us that this would be codified and made a more permanent solution if the county could buy these buildings and then be able to provide some sort of wraparound services, social work, health care, food and medical assistance. This seems like not only just like the compassionate human thing to do, it also seems like it is the reasonable public safety thing to do. And it even seems like it makes the best financial sense to deal with these things responsibly and proactively rather than to keep trying to put Band-Aids on them. So on behalf of my parishioners, the people that are part of our organization, we want to ask this county commission to please be proactive in this circumstance and set something up that's not like piecemeal and is not like a continuing resolution, but is something that can be planned around and put forward like Project Turnkey. Thank you.
Gary, you want to address one of the comments the caller made?
Yes, I don't believe those 2 hotels actually are used currently for the temporary shelters. We have other hotels in Clackamas County, but not those 2.
Were vouchers ever given, I wonder?
Not for those 2 hotels that I'm familiar with, no.
Yeah, I had heard that before, and thank you for the clarification on that. They have not been used for that purpose. Go ahead, Tony.
My last registered speaker is Anna Hosley. Anna, please state your name and area of residence. You will have 3 minutes.
Hello, Commissioners. This is Pastor Anna Hosley, and I live in Oak Grove, and I am the lead pastor organizer of Storyline Community, as well as the Clackamas Land and Housing Cohort, which is a collection of faith communities leveraging their land and resources to meet the housing needs of our whole community. And I am delighted also to comment on Project Turnkey. As you commissioners know, because I know we talk about it a lot, our overall housing supply is critically low, and specifically our immediate shelter capacity is far below what's needed to respond to the layers upon layers of crisis that have hit so many of our residents in the past few years. I'm finding more and more neighbors and community members lately who are experiencing homelessness for the first time in their lives. I'm thinking of a neighbor right now who is a child care provider, who for years has wrapped around the kiddos in our community and their families and really provides a network of care far beyond her paycheck. She's a gift to our community, and she became homeless for the first time in her life after loss of income during the pandemic. That loss was felt by the whole community she cares for, because the truth of a community is that we rise and we fall together. And of course, this is one of many types of incidents, as Story spoke to, that can bump our neighbors into instability when market rent is so disproportionate to income, from a medical event to a family emergency. I don't know if any of you or any of our listeners have experienced this, but the road back can be almost impossible in our system when you don't have stable ground to get your feet back under you. That's part of why I'm so excited that we're one of just a handful of projects out of many, many applicants given approval for due diligence to purchase a hotel for transitional shelter through Project Turnkey with funding from the state. And I think it's exciting for so many reasons. It provides a stable transition space for those that are most impacted by the housing crisis, like the neighbor I talked about. And county ownership would allow for full on-site management. We've seen that when a county really invests in this basic infrastructure, it increases the care, support, and safety for both residents of the shelter and for the community surrounding it. This is also a solution that is exciting because it's such a fiscally responsible use of taxpayer dollars. Right now, we're utilizing those hotels or other ones. I actually think that's worth looking into because, like Josh spoke about, I do know of some case management being provided at one of those hotels right now. But right now we're using some hotels anyway in a one-off way, but paying a daily market rate for a hotel space, which really was a good solution to bridge the gap as an emergency measure. but is not sustainable or the most efficient use of funds in the long run. And I think it's time to move to more sustainable solutions. Like we've talked about, there's really a critical deficit of housing supply in our community. And we know that boosting that supply and care anywhere across the housing spectrum positively impacts folks all across the spectrum. We are literally in this together. Like I spoke about before with my neighbor, the truth about community is that we rise and we fall together.
Thank you very much for calling in, Anna. I appreciate your advocacy for this project. Tony, anybody else?
I do not have any other registered participants. If there is anyone who would like to speak during public comment, please use the raise hand feature and I will call on you in the order received. Madam Chair, I do not have any hands raised.
Thank you. Commissioner Savas.
I appreciate all the callers today speaking about this. And I think, Anna, thank you for your comments. And I think she pointed out something more specific than the other two, and that is people that are newly homeless for economic reasons. I don't think she used the word economic, but I'm sure that's a big factor in it. And those are the easiest people to help. And they don't really need a transition from the street, if you will, or due to drug or alcohol or mental health issues or whatever it may be. They need really a roof over their head today or soon so they don't have to experience the trauma of being on the street. So those are the easiest people to place. And ideally, Anna, if you can get them directed to our housing staff and see if we have some affordable housing units or a voucher program to get those people placed. That's really unfortunate. But again, they're the easiest people to help. It's the chronic homeless that need that transition. And we have been utilizing, as I heard staff say, about 90 hotel rooms that we're paying for currently for that very purpose of helping people transition. Thank you.
And believe it or not, the leading cause of homelessness, according to a 2020 study conducted at the University of California, is the high cost of housing is the leading cause of homelessness. And I had quite the conversation with a constituent of all of ours. He owns a lot of property, and he took me to task on that, and he says, no, we all know the reason why. Well, what is the reason why? And they automatically go to the lawbreakers and the offenders and the drug addicts or the alcoholics, and then after that, the mental health issues ensue. And they think that is the main population, but there's a woman with 2 kids whose husband died. And I'm just going to share with commissioners, I got an email last weekend. She wanted to park an RV in her sister's property so they could live until she was able to stabilize and go forward. An RV. A neighbor reported her because she was in code violation. And I was just appalled at that. So I've since met with our county staff in this area to try to remedy that situation. It's partly a county code, but it's also a state law, which I find abhorrent. If I have to sponsor a legislation by myself in the next session, I will do away with that. Now, this is for natural resource zones. I live on a farm. I have 45 acres. If I have a relative or even a friend who is in this situation or worse, yeah, I'm going to bring them there and I'm going to park them there. Hell be damned, the county codes. And it's government, in part, leading the way is exasperating the homeless population. That's just my thoughts on that. So, commissioners, you're going to be viewing that soon, coming up. Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said here. I think the car camping or a vehicle, a lot, if you will, or an area, a land that can accommodate RVs for people to live is a easy, short-term, lowest cost method of keeping people in some kind of areas. And some people are going to continue to live in their cars because they feel comfortable, they own it, they know it, they can lock themselves in, they feel more secure. It doesn't work for everyone, and there's some examples where it doesn't really work so well for the neighborhoods sometimes if they're really maybe not abiding by the law. So having a place and having the sanitation and the showers, there is a way of doing it effectively, and I wish we would make more progress more quickly. Our RFI process did not reveal anyone offering that model, and I still believe that we could initiate something here, and we should have done it a long time ago.
Yes, I agree, Commissioner Savas.
Thank
In
you.
fact, I didn't even know that code existed. I knew some cities had it, but I didn't know it was a county policy. So you learn something every day in this job, right? Tony, anybody else on there? Anybody else in the room? If not, I will close the public communication portion of this meeting, and we will move on. Gary, what's up next?
Next is County Administrator Update. That's me. I like to use my time to share good news of our county employees and our programs. To start today, Clackamas Water Environment Services and nonprofit partner Solve completed the 5th annual Summer Waterway Cleanup Project. More than 11,000 pounds of trash from 54 natural areas in Clackamas County were removed. 1,500 volunteers of all ages took part in these cleanups in Clackamas County. And our volunteers learned how objects on the ground can be carried by stormwater runoff to our waterways, which is the leading cause of water pollution in Oregon. Next, 2 of our employees in CCOM, our 911 center, were honored by the Oregon chapter of the Association of Public Safety Communications Officials and the National Emergency Number Association. First, Tony Sexton received the Lifetime Achievement Award for her extensive career in public safety that included the past 5 years spent here at Clackamas County and CCOM. During her career, she has held every possible position in a 911 center, and we thank her for her service. Next, Katie Alexander received the Commitment to Excellence Award for her work at CCOM and regionally. She not only implemented CCOM's local quality assurance and quality improvement program, but in her efforts to design our local program, she has become a thought leader on this effort throughout the entire state of Oregon. So congratulations to Tony and Katie for their recognition, and just another example of our pretty amazing county employees here at Clackamas County. Finally, Commissioners, as you know, the Northwest Public Employees Diversity Conference, the 29th annual conference, was held earlier this week at the Oregon Convention Center. I want to thank you, Commissioners. All 5 of you attended. You were the only local government in the Portland area, Washington, Multnomah, Clackamas County, where all 5 elected officials of the board attended. And I'm grateful for that, and our employees are grateful, and I know the public is too. Thank you for your commitment. That is my report today.
Thank you, Gary. We are now at Commissioner Communication. Up first, Commissioner Savas.
Oh, thank you. So I was a little bit late today. I apologize. I had an unexpected call with someone who is a very active and a leader in some transportation issues in this region. And we discussed some of the challenges with the tolling proposal that's being put out there today. And what was pointed out to me in a different way that I was not really aware of is how incredibly low cost efficient it is right now to collect gas tax, meaning the administration cost for the collection of gas tax is extremely low. And this tolling proposal, I've used the numbers of $500 million, and I used the numbers of $1 billion approximately to administer annually the toll. And if you think about that for a minute, let's just say it's $500 million to administer a tolling program in the metro region. And here we are creating a tolling program to fund a $500 million construction project that's going to take 20 years to pay for. Now, someone, you know, those of us that get the math right away say, well, geez, in 1 year we could pay for this project, okay? Why would we create a system in which we would take and destroy and hurt families in the facts of affordability, where we would somehow extrapolate $1 billion a year out of the people who work and live in our community to administer a program that will pay for a $500 million project over 20 or 30 years? Does that make sense?
Correct.
I don't think so. I don't think it makes any sense at all. And that's a point that I made a long, long time ago. I just did not realize how low cost it is to administer the gas tax program today in the state of Oregon. So I will be looking into that. I'll also be looking into the cost of the vehicle registration fee, which is also a factor of that. The other thing the public doesn't know, and this was also part of the conversation this morning, what the public doesn't know is that people say, where's our gas tax dollars going? Where's it going? Where's it going? And 10 years ago, I felt pretty confident in telling people, the way that the dollars are divided, and they go into bridge maintenance, they go into road maintenance, so on. And the county, or for every dollar of gas tax, 50 cents goes to the state, 30 cents goes to the counties, and 20 cents goes to the cities. And the state of Oregon, of that 50 cents, divided that into maintenance and bridges and all those other things. And we do the same thing here, actually, in Clackamas County. Not exactly, but similarly. Well, what's happened here in the last few years, several years, because our elected leaders have basically, not unanimously, but basically have elected to start directing the dollars away from maintenance, away from roads, and into safety is a good issue as well. Maybe some climate active things, climate action, because now that's a federal requirement, granted. Bike lanes, pedestrian facilities, all those good things. But the other thing that is being looked into right now that I was not aware of in a more concerted way is that there are people now asking ourselves if we're seeing pedestrian bicycle accidents go up. And we're seeing them, it appears, just has the appearance, again, we're going to do some more work on that as we build more bike lanes, build more bike lanes, build more pedestrian facilities, we have more accidents. Is there a relationship between encouraging people to take those, which is a cost-effective means, but it's going to be somewhat unfortunate that we have accidents, but then unfortunately maybe as more people use those facilities, that we can expect more accidents to happen. So is there a relationship that we can control, and can we actually have, and ideally we have here a program in Clackamas County, really, what is it, Gary? Net zero, I forget exactly what it is.
Drive to Zero?
Drive to Zero. So we have had the drive, and it's a nationally recognized program, Drive to Zero, and our goal was really to have 0 deaths in Clackamas County as a result of our safety improvements. So all to say that, we are now not, I can't say what I said 10 years ago, about how those dollars divided, and I have a concern, frankly, that are we getting really the return on investment and creating a safer community, or are we accidentally, unintentionally creating a more dangerous one? And what can we do actually to make bike ped and all those other alternatives safer? Long story short, this is a conversation I think really needs to be brainstormed. I think it needs to be more public, and I think we actually need to have more understanding of what's happening as we start layering more fees, vehicle registration fees going up, gas tax going up, tolling, congestion pricing, road user fees, which are coming around the corner, and then potentially a VMT fee, and possibly a local metro bond for more transportation projects. That is something where affordability today is already a challenge, and with all these added costs, I'm afraid that transportation may actually, I won't say surpass the rents or anything, but it's going to have a huge dent in someone's food bill. A bag of groceries is ridiculously high. Just imagine that you have a choice one day between filling up your gas tank or you're paying your toll fees versus a bag of groceries. It's a very sad time. As rents increase, everything increases. We need to be a lot more mindful about what we're doing as government to make sure we don't increase that burden. Those are my comments for today, Chair. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Savas. Commissioner Scholl, you're up next.
Yes, good morning, Clackamas County. And thank you for the people who came here to testify. This has been very helpful. I appreciate your time. For the people who are concerned about the rights of the people, concerned about mandates that affect jobs, businesses, and the overall economy here in this county, the state, and the nation, I look forward to working with you. This November, we will see what happens in the state legislature and in the governor's office, and that will dictate some of the options we have for moving forward with your concerns. For the people from Boring and Cottrell area on the Portland Water Bureau project, I share your concerns. I know when it comes to my vote, I won't support any road going by that school there on that corner on Bluff Road. That's already a unsafe intersection, as is Dodge Park Boulevard, which has seen some very bad accidents in the last year. Administrator Schmidt, I see some folks have come down from the Hoodland Fire District. Can you remind us when the Hoodland Fire District dormant property comes back on the schedule for the Board of Commissioners?
Yes, we'll bring it back to you in an executive session discussion the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
Okay, okay, good, thank you. On the Sandy Health Center, I look forward to speaking there this afternoon at the grand opening at 3 o'clock. This clinic will provide much-needed medical, dental, and mental health services to the people, especially of East County from Sandy to Government Camp. Also, to the people of the Warm Springs Reservation. People forget that part of the Warm Springs Reservation is in Clackamas County, and I look forward to the Paiute tribe, the Wasco tribe, and the Warm Springs tribe of the Warm Springs Reservation to come and use this facility in Sandy also. On short-term rentals, a big issue across the county, in considering other regulations on STRs, I communicated with Commissioner David Yamamoto from Tillamook County. They have been administering STRs in their regulations since April 2019. I find it interesting that this last summer they chose to suspend issuance of any new permits for STRs because of the overwhelming number of people it's bringing to some of their coastal communities in the summertime in particular. So as Commissioner Savas and I work on this issue for the board, we'll be continuing to look at what's working and what's not only in the state but throughout the country, and we'll come back to you later on. On the Tukwila Springs supportive housing project that opened earlier this year, I look forward to going there next week for a visit to see how that's going. And I also look forward to a visit at the O'Connell Lodge, which is one of the motels we use for supportive housing now, to talk to residents and the management to see how that facility is functioning so that it might influence my opinion on the turnkey decision that's coming up. On sheltering the homeless, you saw in the consent agenda today a grant to Zor Evangelical Lutheran Church for providing extreme weather and smoke shelter services to alleviate suffering of the homeless and the disadvantaged. This is an example of how the community is working with the county and the Oregon Department of Housing and Community Services to make life better for people in Clackamas County. And we still need partners in the county to address some of the safety off the street projects. They're urgently needed. And other churches in the county that are providing food, shelter, and other services to our people. I thank you very much for your efforts. On veterans, for all veterans returning home from active duty, please remember that Clackamas County has an active Veterans Council and services here in the county that can help you readjust back to civilian life. The county also has health clinics that can assist in mental health or PTSD or other medical or dental issues you might have. We have our suicide rate in Oregon is higher than the national average. You're not alone. Clackamas County is here to help. We have an urgent mental health walk-in center on 82nd Avenue. And also, the Clackamas Crisis and Support Line is open 24/7, 365, 503-655-8585. Don't hesitate to reach out. We're here to help. I would like to remind folks that in just a few short weeks, we'll be at the polls, and the result of that election is going to affect the leadership in the state, the folks that represent us in the legislature, and also have an effect on some of the very important measures that are on the ballot. So I always encourage people, don't wait until the voter pamphlet statement comes out. Get online, do some research, and know how you're going to react and vote on these issues. On this day in history, I always like to add a little bit of history. It's very important. On this day, in 1792, the cornerstone to the White House was laid, and 8 years later, President Adams, John Adams, and his wife Abigail moved in. A thought for today. We can commit injustice by doing nothing. So find a cause, an issue, or a problem, and become the one person with the solution. I don't care if you're 18 years old or 98 years old. The citizen has the ultimate power in this nation, and therefore the ultimate responsibility to represent the Republic and make this place a little bit better than it was yesterday. On the fire season, oh man, I tell you what, I feel so lucky that we've been able to get through a very long fire season in Clackamas County without any major fires, while at the same time in Idaho, eastern Washington, southern Oregon, and in California, we've seen fires that approach 250,000 acres burned this year. So keep up the good work for just a little bit longer. And with that, have a good day.
Thank you, Commissioner Scholl. Commissioner Fisher, you're up.
Thank you, Chair Smith. I was interested in what Commissioner Savas was saying about the drive to zero. And I haven't been downtown much. I don't know about other folks, but I have most of what I need here in Clackamas County. But I was just driving down there, and there is all this new areas. They've stopped areas of streets, and there are dedicated new bike lanes and different parking, and it's so different in downtown Portland. And I was confused driving. I'm like, oh my gosh, am I going to mess up here in how I'm driving and where I'm supposed to drive and how it's all working? But one thing that I was thinking about while I was doing that is, how do we educate drivers about all of these changes when there's these dedicated lanes? And I would really like to really understand as we move forward on some of these drive to zero strategies, how we educate and how safe it is. So Commissioner Savas, more conversations and a little deeper dive on that with you in the future really was something that I was thinking about earlier this week. Chair Smith, I really appreciated what you said in regards to the person that would like to stay in the RV on someone's residence, which just seems ridiculous to me that that's an issue and a problem, and we definitely need to fix that. Government should not be in the way of people being able to stay on someone's property. That is a serious problem. I know that I have a brother who had experienced a bout of homelessness, and he was in a tent in my backyard in Lake Oswego for like almost a summer, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I was probably breaking the Lake Oswego code, but don't tell anyone that that's something that happened. But my gosh, if we can't support family, friends, there's something seriously wrong with our government system. So that all being said, there is the Metro Homeless Services measure. There is a tri-county planning body. Chair Smith was the liaison for quite some time. She's asked me to step in and take over that liaison role. Yesterday was the first meeting that I had participated in, and I was able to be there for much of it, but not all of it. But I did research and study all of the material, so I just want to update my board on some of the priorities that this group is looking at. And one thing, and we've talked about this, Chair Smith talking about the cause of homelessness is the cost of housing. We have seen that. It is a serious problem, not just in the region here, in the metro region, but across the state, and really specifically across the West Coast and across the country. But what this tri-county planning body is doing, they are looking at regional long-term rent assistance and really looking at collaborating so that landlords and individuals have the same set of rules, the same set of processes, and really figuring this out as a region so that it's not different across that area, which I think is very good work. The other thing that this group is doing, which is kind of wonky, but I think it's worth us mentioning and talking about, there is, government money goes out in what is called a procurement. It's how we grant money. And you wouldn't think that different government entities like Clackamas County, Multnomah County, Washington County would be different because we're all government agencies and there are state laws that sort of direct how we operate. But there are differences across the local jurisdictions. So for this homeless services measure, really working to figure out how are we going to do these procurements so that it's similar across the region, which will mean that we will be able to work with providers across the region and make it more streamlined. And I think that will be a way that government will be working more efficiently. The other piece that is so important, we really have to know how we're doing and what success. And my talking point for a really long time now has been, it can't be how many people have we stably housed as our measure of success. That's important to look at, but we also have to look at how have we reduced homelessness. That needs to be what we're measuring. And I'm so pleased that there is an effort, it's called Built to Zero, and it will be keeping data on people who are unsheltered in a way that we'll be able to measure what interventions work, how are people doing after they receive housing, how are they able to stay in housing, what's happening, and we will be able to have data on that. Clackamas County's been on the forefront of that, been engaged in that effort. We are far ahead in building that system. The other two counties are coming along, and this is now a tri-county effort. So very happy about that. And along with what Chair Smith was saying about you can't have an RV on your property, a gentleman came and testified during the public communication part of the meeting and talked about the barriers for people who have some criminal history that makes it really hard for them to be accepted into housing because there are those barriers for if you've committed a crime. And he told a story about a veteran who had some criminal history in his background, and with our veterans, we've worked so hard. We have vouchers, we have veterans outreach workers, we've got all this support. We've really, really targeted supporting our veterans. But with all of that, there are so many barriers. So he was promoting a homeless court so that those criminal charges, those criminal convictions could be expunged so that people that are veterans and others that might have that as a barrier could go through a legal process if it's appropriate to have some of that expunged. It was a very interesting presentation, and it will be something that I'm going to be following and tracking and looking at what seems to make sense. I'm going to talk to our district attorney and talk to others to see how that would fare here in Clackamas County. So, a couple other things on my commissioner communication. Oh, and commissioners, please, all these issues, please issue Sponham Chair Smith. Keep bringing them. I can bring this. I wish I would have had that for yesterday. I would have said, hey, by the way, we need to do something regionally about these codes. We need a one-size-fits-all for bill to the legislature. And Chair Smith, I'm happy to go arm in arm with you, the legislature, on that piece of legislation. October 10th was Indigenous Peoples' Day, and Clackamas County, anybody see the front page of the Oregonian? It had a beautiful article about the celebration at Clackamas Community College, which celebrated the history for our Indigenous peoples from across the region. There were vendors with, oh gosh, there was some of the most beautiful jewelry. There was fry bread, there were stories, there was drumming, there was music, there was so much going on. There was also, through Red Lodge, which is one of our providers, transitioning women from Indigenous communities back into the community. They have a recycler program, and it was great. So they have 2 pictures of it's kind of garbage, right? But what can be recycled, what can't be recycled? And I just loved it that we were, in this day of Indigenous Peoples' Day, looking at how do we protect the planet, what do we put in our recycle bin, what do we put in our garbage bin, had some wonderful conversations. I took my daughter who has special needs, and oh my gosh, she loved the teepee. All the children and the different people could go inside the teepee, and although she's 37 years old and she used a wheelchair for most of the event, she just loved being inside that teepee and looking around and just all the giggles and laughter and fun, and it was such a celebration. The vet, however, I don't think was prepared for the 1,000 people or over 1,000 people. I'm looking to Gary, that's what they were counting, were there at the event. So next year, there'll be more flour. They ran out of flour for the fry bread towards the end of the event, which is, what a wonderful problem to have, right? But that day was great. I was happy to be there, and so happy for the collaboration with Clackamas Community College, with the tribes, with the different nonprofits, with our staff. Tracy Moreland, who's part of our commission office, was there and supporting, as well as many of our other staff, and it was really fun. So next year, mark your calendar, October 10th. I'm not sure where it will be, if it will continue to be at Clackamas Community College, but there will be an Indigenous Peoples' Day celebration, and it will be fun. So that's what I've got for today.
Thank you, Commissioner Fisher. Commissioner Schrader, you're up.
I'm really going to try and run through stuff fast here, guys, today, because we've been here for a while. Okay, our County Workforce Investment Board, they have been recognized by the Oregon Business Magazine. They were just named as the best small nonprofit in Oregon. The quote was, Clackamas Workforce Partnership recently went through a metamorphosis and growth activity, professional development, and changes in both level of support and what they do for the community. They have worked here at our county. I'm proud to be the person, kind of their point person for some of the work they do. The Clean Slate Expungement Clinic that will help people who have criminal records, get their records clean and get into housing and access some of the social services that they may need. The Future Ready Scholarships for Students and the Child Care Task Force. Okay, their work perks include remote work, flex scheduling, work hours to volunteer, and community engagement and development opportunities. Kudos to you guys. You are one of our best nonprofits here in the county. Second, an update on Oregon's Mount Hood territory. They have also received an award from DMA West. And this was because in September 2020, Oregon's Riverside wildfire ravaged the southeastern area of Mount Hood National Forest, leaving many important recreation assets destroyed. That included a large portion of Highway 224, and Mount Hood Territory, who is the branding for all of our tourism here in this county, recognized the need for a centralized location in the upper Clackamas River corridor, where visitors could find all the information regarding the opening. So, in collaboration with the United States Forest Service, ODOT, and Portland General Electric, the staff created a landing page with information about the Upper Clack River corridor at mounthoodterritory.com/Clackamas. Clackamas/river. Mount Hood Territory worked with the state and federal agencies to actually make sure that page moved forward. Also, I want to mention that our tourism department is now going into their development planning cycle. You should be seeing resident surveys, a Travel Oregon stakeholder survey, regional focus groups, so on and so forth. They are our premier tourism program here in Clackamas County. And as you know, we are the gateway to Mount Hood, so they have a nice area in order to promote that will help our tourism economy. Finally, I just want to let folks know and my colleagues know, yesterday with Michael Matthews, who's the Legislative Director for Community Economic and Workforce Development through the National Association of Counties, we had our first board meeting of that. So we are up and running. We actually heard from the Department of Labor. We heard from actually NACO itself that was talking a little bit about resilient communities. And I'm going to be looking forward, colleagues, to getting you the particulars on that meetings. Every week you will get a weekly economic development update that I get from NACO. I'm going to make sure it gets forwarded to you, and all the information that we have. In particular, the Department of Labor will be highlighting apprenticeship programs, so that is something I hope we can work with Clackamas Workforce Partnership to value those and get those up and running. And with Chair Smith, I know we've talked about working with our community college to get funding to those apprenticeship programs. So, okay, there's probably plenty more, but we're running out of time.
Thank you.
Mr. Smith.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Schrader. I will be speaking and emceeing at the opening of the Sandy Clinic later this afternoon with Commissioner Shull. Look forward to that very much. The entire board attended a celebration of the future of the brand-new Gladstone Library this week, the unveiling of the architecture and sign that's posted at the corner of Portland Avenue and Dartmouth in downtown Gladstone. And the reason why I bring that up is those people in the community are very happy. And it was good for this board to experience happy people. I did not realize how much lacking we had been in that. And because we get tomatoes and eggs thrown at us constantly, and it was just a very nice event. And sometimes I go back in my mind and think about happy people once again. Thank you all for coming and expressing your opinions today. They are appreciated. Hearing no future business before this meeting, we are adjourned.